there, I would request to speak at this time on that bill if it's not going to be heard. But if
well,
if I have
you go ahead and speak now, because I'm assuming that it's going to be heard, but I'd rather have you speak now while it's fresh in your mind.
Well, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that, Mr. Chairman. And the reason I wanted to speak is, and it was particularly brought to the forefront when one of the part of the testimony spoke to a difficult, I believe the words were a difficult, loving, and educated choice to terminate a pregnancy because the information conveyed was that they had been told that the information was that the baby was incompatible with life. I have a very personal experience of my brother and his wife being told that very same thing. And what I wanted to do was share his experience with that, and I asked him to send me. It's somewhat truncated, but I didn't want to take up a lot of time. It was 3 years ago this week that Andrea, my brother's wife, went in for an ultrasound at about the 17th week of pregnancy. That ultrasound revealed a few troubling things: excess fluid on the brain, absence of the radius bone in the left arm, and what appeared to be a clubbed foot. We started seeing specialists right away to do more detailed ultrasounds and try and determine what was going on. One of the first appointments was with a counselor who encouraged Andrea to have an amniocentesis. The reason for the encouragement was that we would at least have information that would help us make a more informed decision as to how we were going to proceed. At that point, it appeared to the doctors that our little guy most likely had a condition that would not be compatible with life. We elected not to have an amniocentesis at that time, and that was due to some of the potential risks associated with it at that stage. We did have an amniocentesis later in the pregnancy. If there were complications, Brent, that was the name that they had chosen for their little boy, was far enough developed that he would be fine if he was to survive at all. The test came back negative for the conditions that are currently able to be tested for. Because the specialist could now see an abnormality with the heart, in addition to the brain, the excess fluid, hydrocephalus, was becoming more severe as the pregnancy went on. We were sent to a pediatric thoracic surgeon and a neurosurgeon. At week 36, we had the appointment with the neurosurgeon. He informed us that Brent's brain had become so thinned out by the pressure from the fluid that it was very possible he was, quote, past the point of no return. In other words, his brain may never, ever function at all. At that point, because Brent's head had grown so big, and so much because of the severity of his condition, we were given the option to abort. This would be less risky for, I apologize. This would be less risky for Andrea, who would have to undergo a more substantial C-section because of the size of Brent's head. We elected not to abort, and the neurosurgeon then asked us to be at the hospital the following morning at 6 a.m. to deliver the baby so that a shunt could be placed in the baby's brain as soon as possible. Brent was born July 22, 2009. And spent the next few weeks in the NICU, coming home well before doctors expected. He certainly has his difficulties and has been through a number of surgeries, but he is the happiest little guy you'll ever meet. It turns out his brain did start growing after the pressure was relieved by the shunt. His heart abnormality was not a problem. The little guy knows his ABCs, and though a little later than normal, is able to stand up and walk while holding someone's hands or holding on to furniture. This is my nephew. I share that with you because I do not believe this bill. I believe this bill helps in making sure that that decision is completely informed. Had my sister-in-law and brother-in-law made the difficult choice that was testified to earlier, the difficult, loving, and educated choice, Brent would not be with us today. I wanted to also respond, Mr. Chairman, to a couple of things that I believe are concerning to me. Number one is some testimony that was given that a child like this is a child that somebody is going to have to care for. I find that testimony incredibly offensive. I do not believe that a child, even a child with problems that is going to need care, is a child that should be considered one that somebody has to care for, and certainly a burden in many ways, but that child has rights as well. The final thing I wanted to say, Mr. Chair, is a response to the question of tort reform and how this bill could hurt in our efforts to attract the best doctors to the state. Mr. Chairman, this bill, I do not believe, discourages the type of doctors I believe we should be encouraging to this state in any way. In fact, those doctors that would be discouraged to come to this state because of this bill are not doctors I believe should be coming to this state anyway. With that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to respond to some of the testimony. I'm hopeful that this bill will be put on an agenda. I believe it is the right thing to protect the rights of many in this state, and I look forward to being able to vote on this bill in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pierce.